Welcome to another episode of Off the Record with KyleSellsBiz. So every week we bring you a special guest expert that talks about different topics of how to improve your business, get ready for an exit acquisition, or just grow your business organically. My name is Kyle Griffith. I'm the CEO and founder of M&A Network and the managing partner of the NYBB Group. We are a mergers and acquisitions company based here in New York. And I'm excited that I can be here every week and share folks that I know that are experts in their field to give you some real life insights into how to run a better business. Today, I have a very special guest. You're going to hear from her shortly, but I do want to make some quick announcements. So stay tuned next week. We are going to be having John Noonan. He's the CEO of Growth Plan Partners, and he's going to talk about sales revenue and how to increase your business profitability and all that great stuff. I'm going to introduce Christina and bring her to the stage. Christina, it's such a pleasure to have you. I'm so glad we finally got a chance to have this session. You know, Christina Singh is a financial planner, financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual, and she helps our clients with holistic planning, cash flow management, investment advisory, and the topic for today, business succession planning. And her expertise lies in helping business owners create legacies, build generational wealth, and ensure continuity. So, Christine, it's a pleasure to have you, and welcome to Off the Record with KyleSellsBiz.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be having this conversation with you. We've had actually a lot of this conversation off the record, so it's exciting to share it with your community.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a topic is very important. You know, you have a lot of business owners that start their business and they haven't taken the steps to put their planning in place to see, okay, well, what happens next, right? What's life after business, and who can come in and take their role and take their legacy they have built and continue that legacy, right? So I'm very excited to have you. Typically, and if you're joining our broadcast today, you're either a business owner that wants some insights and getting ready for an exit, or you're an advisor that's consulting with business owners. And so we welcome you to join in the conversation. We do have a Q&A, but we have there's a comment section where you can put your questions for Christina. And whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, or here on LinkedIn, we can see your questions. Preferably, there should be a link, no matter which platform you're on, there's a link that's going to take you to LinkedIn, which would be the preferred platform for your questions. If you want to join us there, it'll be fantastic. So, Christina, we're going to kick things off. Let's share with the audience a little bit your background. I know you have a fascinating one of being a business owner and coming from a family full of entrepreneurs, and now you're in financial advisory. So why don't you share a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I know that my past recently came up at one of your round tables, and it's funny because I never imagined that I would have shared that story. And this may seem very silly, but I didn't realize how much relevance it had in my work. Like, I maybe took my past experiences as the daughter of entrepreneurs, and maybe I took that for granted, and it just seems so relevant in one of the conversations we've had with your community. But growing up, my parents had an HVAC business. That's really all I knew about their work situation growing up. So kind of to tell the story here, I grew up in my childhood home answering the house phone saying, "High Tech Cooling, how can I help you?" And I guess I can say this now, but like, off the record, I probably wasn't allowed to be staying home by myself at that time. So I have an older brother and sister who's 9 and 11 years older than me, and they were fundamental in helping raise me, pick me up from school, because my parents were so busy building the business and they had to be in the brick and mortar space. At the time, I hadn't realized that when I was helping them answer the house phone, what had really been happening is they had just transitioned from their business that they built from their home and had just opened up an office. So some of those calls and this is when we had landlines, some of those calls were directed, and you'd have like more than one line were getting directed to the house. And then I think I had to learn how to transfer the call, or I'd have to write down a message and then call my mom and say, so and so called. And that was when their business was listed in the yellow pages or the white pages. I forget which one is for the businesses. So that's what growing up looked like. When I would get picked up from school, I'd get picked up in that big van with the letters high tech cooling. Their colors were red and blue. I think they did a great job with the graphic design there. So I'm the girl who did not get picked up in a car. I got picked up in a van by my dad, or whatever workers had kind of become family. My mom, oftentimes she was on the admin side, so she would run late sometimes, just running the office. I remember very strongly that probably pickup was hard because that was like the end of office hours, or maybe the middle of the day actually. And then I would grow up. They expanded their office, and they had a warehouse to store all of the HVAC equipment. I remember like my dad would pick me up, and then I would do my homework or play in the office or in the warehouse. My dad would just have me follow him like a little tail, and he would introduce me. And like I literally grew up in business, and I hadn't really put two and two together, like how that could have seeped into my blood essentially. Like I saw my parents become self-made.
Nice. Nice. That's probably been a fantastic, experience. At the time, you didn't know what they were, the lifelong lessons that you were learning, even as, it's funny. I went to a conference for my industry maybe 2 years ago. And, my colleagues, we get together for dinner every once in a while. And one of my colleagues, he's also in the same business. He sells businesses as I do. And he brought his son his both kids actually to the conference. Like, wow, it's like, hanging around with successful entrepreneurs, like, after a while, like, exposing your kids to that, it definitely, it's plants some seeds in their mind and their brain, and you never know what can turn out of it. So, here you are now. From that, you moved on and you started your company, and now you're advising other company owners on their business. Right, so it's interesting, right? So that kind of sparked the seed. So what happened? What happened next? How did you go? What as you explore your entrepreneurship endeavors as you got older? What was next for you?
Yeah, I left a little bit of a cliffhanger in that story because that was the beautiful part of the story. I think where all of my work in today's conversation about succession planning and legacy and generational wealth is because of all the things that come after that story. And I'll go into a little bit more detail there. So the best way to describe this is I would believe that my family, or my parents, became well known in our family for being self-made, for being entrepreneurs, and for being successful business owners. I don't remember growing up and never not having. I was fortunate enough in my parents' immigration story, as in comparison to my brother and sister, I didn't have to hear no often if there was something that I wanted, because my parents were making their money at that point. And the business was successful. But what came after that, because of lack of planning, came a lot of investments personally, and in the business. And what I mean by that is, when I was around 13, my parents decided to build their dream house. I had mentioned they expanded their brick and mortar. They were now adding extra property, and subleasing other offices because, again, they were successful, and they were probably, again, I was so young to be involved in this conversation, they were probably trying to reallocate their assets. And most of us know, like, we want to reinvest our dividends. We want to reinvest the dollars that we make right into the business. So I don't think there was anything wrong with that. But, part of my work is there are some things we can control and there are some things that we can't. And the biggest part of my job is mitigating risk. And in order to mitigate risk, you have to start understanding, assessing, and planning for things that could not go well. And I don't know if that completely was something my parents had thought of. Knowing my mom, she probably brought it up to my dad a lot. And knowing my dad, he probably thought like, oh, it's going to be okay. What followed that is they built their dream home. This is going to sound insane, but I have to share it to put context to this. I grew up on 6 acres in Florida.
Wow.
The dream home. I counted once, our property had 13 bathrooms because it was like a one huge unit. Well, it was one house. They expanded on it. Each kid had their own bathroom, and we had a guest house, and then they turned the bottom part of the house into a mother-in-law suite. And there was a barn by the previous owners that they just turned into a garage. Obviously, a HVAC owner would want more storage space.
Yeah.
My dad was an engineer, so he just loved his gadgets. So we had a lot of property. I say that to say, like, that's how much they leaned into this is our dream. And many first, like most immigrants would understand the American dream is owning your home. So I want to paint that picture. What happened after that is my parents' marriage fell apart. They got divorced. I think that there was some sickness in my dad as well, which, may or may not have affected the marriage, but definitely impacted the business. And here's where everything took a huge turn. My brother at the time worked for Intel in Arizona. And here's the stories that have been told to me. Again, I was super young, but it was like, hey, they told my brother, can you come back to Florida and help the parents with the business? And I'm sure that conversation was probably like, this could be his future, great, you're great at technology. I don't know if the conversation they had there is, hey, you love technology and this is your world and you're great at it, bring technology to our HVAC business. Because what I do remember is my mom trying to help with the business planning and the financials and the paperwork. And I remember, even though I didn't know much as a young kid, I remember seeing the discomfort and the fights and the disagreements between my brother and my mom as my mom was trying to train him. He would say, this is not how a business plan works. And, when you're coming out of college and school, we're taught a certain way that someone whose education came from Guyana, like we all do math, every generation, we all do our math differently. So that's maybe the best way to describe why it was probably so hard for them to teach and learn from each other. Yeah. So, the ending of the story goes that the business did not survive. I think they put their best efforts. I think it was a tragedy for my parents more than anything. And almost it's, record breaking history for my family. Like my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, we all reflect on the day that we would use the golf cart to get the mail from the driveway. And the 800-person wedding that my sister had on the property and the businesses and how well my parents did and how sad it is that, it didn't work out because of sickness or infidelity or whatever that could have been. So I think I share my story very bravely. Again, never in my life did I think I would share this story, but especially while my parents are still around. But I think there are a lot of valuable nuggets there as to why I think this important is so important, because I know what my parents wanted for me in having that business, and I know that they're sad they can't deliver on that.
Yeah, I mean it's a powerful story, and it's almost a lot of folks can relate to that, right? As far as having, the pinnacle of success and without having the right plans and everyone being on the same page. And we did a session, I believe you were on that roundtable, about when is the right time to get your children involved in business. And we see many business owners that force the business onto their kids, whether they're ready or not. They don't have a plan as to, okay, when's the right time to get them involved and provide the right training, not just train of how to do the business, but put them in the right mentality, right, to get them, entrenched and on that track to be an entrepreneur, wherever their goals are. They may not want to be an entrepreneur, but whatever their goals are. But, you have the D's, you have the death, divorce, the disability. These are usually things that you cannot predict that happens. And without a plan in place, it can, if the family is dependent upon that business and now that business is not operational, then you have issues. You talked about mitigating risk, what you spoke about today, that's one of them, right? So having the right insurances in place and whatnot. I'm sure we're going to get into a lot about that today. So fast forward a little bit, Christina. So thanks first of all for sharing that story. I think it's a powerful story, and a lot of folks can relate to that, and it shows your authenticity and making it this real. This is what can really happen in life. So fast forward a little bit. So what happened next to lead you to where you are right now?
Yeah, so fast forward, even if I wanted to be an employee and work for somebody, I just don't think it was in my cards because um, I would say that a lot of immigrants, like, we're taught to be little chameleons in organizations and learn how to be really good at a lot of things. And so this
It's
turned
true.
into me opening up my first S Corp in 2016. And that was the start of my entrepreneurship journey, which was founded by a friend who thought very highly of me and was like, "You're great at what you do in corporations." And he was like, "People still call you for questions. You give them answers. You always have the answers. You always figure it out. Like, you should start billing for your time." And so that took on a consultant role. And from 2016, just working with business owners of all different types of organizations, I really enjoyed the financial end, and being a part of what grows and builds a business. And so I decided to start my own financial planning practice. And like we've uncovered in multiple conversations, I have a genuine interest in businesses of all sizes. I obviously have a soft spot in my heart for the mom and pop shops because I can see that there was the day they opened shop and it was just like a small little contract, and um, they just wanted to make ends meet. It grew. They're humble about it. And then there's that like curve where it's like, hey, this is getting bigger, or this could be bigger. And I want to ask those challenging questions as to what's next. Who is this for? Is it going to vanish into thin air, or do you want more? And it's okay to want more, but let's talk about how you get there.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. So let's jump into succession planning. Like, what the key elements, right, of succession planning. What is a succession plan, and just kind of educate us on who should have one and what is a succession plan.
Yeah, so a succession plan is essentially going to be a series of written out, agreements of what happens to the business when the owners are no longer here, right? So a lot of these plans, a lot of companies are family owned, right? If we're talking about the smaller businesses. So you just want to start having those conversations about what comes next. When do the owners want to exit? What does that transition look like? And really enough time for that plan to occur.
Hmm. And at what point should a business owner consider having a succession plan?
If it was up to Winnie, she would say like now, right? I think, I learned a lot from her roundtable discussion, but I would say I think a lot of owners get stuck in the day to day, just keeping their head above water. And there's
Hmm.
always this overlap of their identity is the business and the business
Hmm.
is them. But the earliest you can start creating differentiation on paper is the day that you can actually start putting these plans in place. Like, if you own a business, Kyle, and this is everything that Kyle does, and you are down for like 3 months at a time, who can step in and follow your written instructions? What would that look like? What would pay look like? What would the role and responsibilities look like? I don't think a lot of owners challenge themselves with that exercise enough because like they're too busy. Understood. And this is where outsourcing is going to be helpful. But I would say, that's really my answer for that.
And are there any like mistakes that business owners have when they're considering a succession plan?
The mistake would be not having it, the assumptions. It'll all work itself out. We
Hmm.
talk about this a lot in estate planning. There are a lot of qualities and conversations you would not have expected, but it all comes out like when you're no longer here and people are trying to figure out what to do with your estate. Like the real truth of who gets what does that look like, we all know it can get really touchy. It could get really nasty, right? So it's like, that's not the time to figure this stuff out, not under distress.
Yeah. And that's interesting thing that you mentioned that, because my phone rings, and probably yours too as well, when there is some sort of issue or something traumatic happen in the family. Either there's a disability, someone is sick, or the business on the downturn. And usually you want to sell when things are up, and you have sales are going in the right direction, and you want to make these plans ahead of time, right? It's tough to make plans when everything is in chaos, right? So having these necessary plans in place. Um, these conversations, right? These are very delicate ones, especially when you're dealing with a family, right? You may have 3 or 4 kids. Like in your case, how many siblings you get? Um,
Three. So it's three of us, including me, an older brother, an older sister, and then me.
right. So I mean, it can get some complex as far as who's the right person. It actually was I don't watch too much TV, but a friend of mine reached out to me a year and a half ago, and told me if I ever watched Succession.
Hmm.
I'm like, what? I said, what is? I was like, it sounds like, what is that all about? So it actually was like was it a Netflix, or I forgot what it was on? Probably
Yeah.
Netflix. I'm not sure, but it was a reality series about very successful businessman, and he had I think it was 2 or 3 kids. Forgot exactly how many he had, and it was just a complete mess. Like no one was actually the right fit to run a company. It was just a soap opera, if ever there was one. This was a soap opera, and it was very intriguing, and trying to figure, okay, who's the right person to run a company. All the kids were fighting, like it has to be
Hmm.
me, it has to be me, whatever. But in some cases, some kids actually, they don't want to. The children sometimes don't want to be necessarily be in the business, and I've gotten a call when, unfortunately, in a sad situation, the father, the mom, or the owner of the company passes, and the kids reach out to us and says, "Hey, this was their dream, and I have some other aspirations, and now I want to sell the business,
Hmm.
sell dad's business, sell mom business, and move on and focus on what I really want." I went to a conference about 2 years ago, and I met a very successful business person. And what he said is that he actually sends his children to work for another company, from
Hmm.
just to learn true values of entrepreneurship and business. And because sometimes when you have it already, it's like children kind of feel a little bit entitled, like, this is going
Hmm.
to be mine anyways. I'm not going to have the true drive and grit to run the company.
Yep.
So he actually send them to work for another company for a few years first before they get back involved in the family business. I thought that was a great thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I was going to mention that anyways too,
yeah.
because I love that strategy. But I, I mean, you probably get more of this than I do, but don't you feel like more times than not, like if it's an assumption that the child will inherit the business, there's like less of an interest.
Hmm.
It is a sense of, I don't want to say it, I don't know if entitlement is the right word. It's just like
Hmm.
it's there, right? It doesn't feel like choice. Like if we really dumb life down, like at that end of life stage, everybody is about their freedom, their security, and their choice,
Hmm.
right? And I think unless that child of the parent who has the business is like, this is what I want, because
Hmm.
it's there and it's like, hey, this is what you're getting, you've already taken the choice from them. So with that strategy, hey, go work for somebody else and see how good you could have it. You could be self-made, and but also this is not easy. This is hard work, regardless if it's your business or someone else's. um, I think those are the real conversations that people need to be having, whether they have children or whatever they want to do with their business.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. That transition, though, as far as having those conversations, right? And then preserving the wealth in the business. Let's talk about what that conversation looks like, and like the clients and that you have worked with. What are usually the first steps in the succession plan, and talking about that transition, and so on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So first steps are to have that uncomfortable conversation. I think a lot of people don't have answers to these conversations, and they also don't think about the financial backing that would be needed for that transition. And they're
Mhm.
also not thinking about worst case scenarios such as death and disability. So before we can really get to the more sophisticated parts of like, here's where our choice is, or here's who we would want to hire or transition to a replacement CEO, let's mitigate that. Hey, you, Mr. Business Owner, are still going to stay in the seat. You have a really important job. Everything you've put into this business is in your head. It's your intellectual property. If something were to happen to you, whether that is disability, which could be, a physical ailment, it could be
Yeah.
disease, it could be cancer. Again, we have such great medical uh, technology, and I think people are scared to think about this, but you could be down, great, you can be in remission, but like, you're going to want to focus on your health and your time with your family. The business is going to be the last thing you care about. And when people don't plan for this, the business goes down, and then they had nothing to save, and they, we all know how that story goes. I've heard it a million times, which is why
Hmm.
for me it's like we have to stop pretending as if we thought life would always be in our favor. Like, that's just not always the case. I've seen it way too many times with my family, with others, that it's a non-negotiable. I don't entertain the like optimistic attitude. Yes,
Hmm.
let's be optimistic, but only if we can plan for worst case scenario. Because are you willing to lose everything you built for 10 years because you were too scared to have a conversation or put certain methods in place? So I think, like, assuming that business owner were to stay in that seat for the rest of their life because they love what they do so much, which is the other part of the conversation. I could never stop working. Great, never stop working. Don't let anything get you out of the game. Um, and so that also just shows how much they love the business. So the way that we mitigate those risks is with insurances. It's a pretty tough conversation to have at times, depending on the client or the business owner and where
Hmm.
they're at from a revenue standpoint, because a lot of, smaller businesses just are being very strategic with each dollar. Um, and they're trying to like weigh out that the liabilities versus like the profit, right? And I'm
Hmm.
just using that example for our smaller businesses. For the bigger businesses, it really should be a no-brainer. They're going to be bigger policies, but insurances shouldn't be eating out the profits or taking too many dollars out of your pocket. It's just a matter of having mechanisms in place, and it's transferring the cost of the risk.
Yeah, good. Those are good points. We're tuning in here today with Christina Singh, and she's on Off the Record with KyleSellsBiz. Appreciate one of you guys are joining. We got Angel Rosario. He says, as an SBA lender who specializes in acquisitions, it's incredible how many business owners don't have a succession plan, which greatly impacts the value and health of their business. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think having what I'm seeing a lot now, Christina, are um, investors buying companies and they're putting folks in place to run the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in that case, they're going to need to have some infrastructure, some people, some key people in place that can actually be there to operate the business. So having that second command, that COO, CFO, director of sales, director of engineering, wherever the case may be. Um, a lot of times it's hard to identify who's going to be the next person to take control of the business. And if it's a partnership where it's a husband and a wife, sometimes either spouse may not be as involved in the
Mm-hmm.
business. We are in the process of selling a company right now, unfortunately, where the owner has passed, and the wife has no idea, like doesn't even know anything about the business.
Mm-hmm.
So these things it happens, and we think it's not going to happen to us. So having a plan in place is very important to make sure that business continues. And we had planned to talk a little bit about buy-sell agreements. We probably should get into that a little bit now, and what is a buy-sell agreement, and why is it crucial for business owners?
Yep. So buy-sell agreement is essentially a life insurance contract. It's also known as key man insurance. So if you have a key man um, person who runs the business, what's the cost if you were to lose that CEO? So back to that intellectual property, you need time and resources for that transition. You need to
Hmm.
find someone qualified who could step in and run the company as effectively, or at least try to, as prior. And so that's where, again, the benefit that gets paid out will go to the company to help the continuity of the business. So it's critical if you want the business to survive.
And talk more about what's included, some of the components of a buy-sell agreement.
So components of the buy-sell agreement are going to include, like, for example, the death or disability. So, from a disability standpoint, it's actually called overhead expenses, and there's different types where you can
Mhm.
protect the business owner's income. Because think about it, if you have a family, you want to make sure you can keep food on the table at the very least. And then the overhead disability insurance is going to make sure that you can pay payroll, you can pay the rent, you can pay all of the expenses for the business. And then, buy sell is going to cover the death. So if someone were to pass away, how do we keep the business running, which is the example I gave previously.
Mhm. Fantastic. If you have any questions, you do want to put it in the comments. We'd be happy to get to them. Is there any points worth mentioning, Christina, about buy sell and the role of a buy sell agreement in the acquisition or sale of a business?
Yeah, maybe the biggest takeaway I could say there is, everybody maybe starts having these conversations once they hit a certain revenue amount. Uh,
Hmm.
I think business owners take that for granted because insurances are based on the insured. Maybe we take, like, not maybe, we take for granted insurability, right?
Hmm.
And everybody has overthought their pre-diabetes, their cholesterol, all the things that they didn't have 5 years before the insurance rep asked them, hey, you should do this, right? So, like, at some point in this journey, you have to just start leaning on the professionals. Take a little bit of the ego out of it, take the fear out of it, and just implement, because like all of this is only as good as implementation. I can give you all of the tips and tricks, but it is still dependent on the insurance company wanting to accept the risk. And that's probably the biggest thing we can even talk about at this point, which is that it's super simple, it's very basic. I think people overthink face values and premiums, and everybody does not really think about, hey, if I want it, I am going to get it. That is not always the case. So that's where you want to lean on and work with professionals to help guide you in that process,
Hmm.
so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot there.
And what point they should, at what point of the process should they consider getting a buy sell agreement in place?
I think the second you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, right?
Mhm.
And you have the business, like the second you have that corporation and you have some income and revenue coming in, I would say just start locking it in, because you, again, don't know if you were to become a X million-dollar business in 1, 5, or 10 years, you're going to need it, and you'll probably continue to need more.
Mhm.
Fun fact is that the average person purchases insurance 7 times in their lifetime. So that in itself should explain that this is not just a one-time conversation. You want to be working with somebody who has conversations with you at a minimum 1 to 2 years. They review what you own. They review and assess, do you have enough coverage? Not someone who says, this is what you need, great, call me if you need more, or if you have any questions, because the two experiences are insanely different. Like, if that person is not invested in you growing, one of two things is happening: it's just a sale. Or secondly, they may have their own concerns about whether that business is growing, and so it's not worth their time. And so, like, maybe that person needs to also be looking at their business plan. So, the industry is not always fair, right?
Mhm.
By my standards, I would say fair. Like, I always want the right thing for people, but I
Right.
often tend to want things for people more than they want it for themselves, meaning like saying like, no, you could do this. I'm the biggest cheerleader, by the way. And saying like, well, what's the problem? How can we get you there? Right. And so sometimes these financial conversations are uncomfortable because we're having to like look at numbers that maybe we're not as proud about.
Hmm. And I think that's one of the key elements of having a good financial planner, because if you have a solution that can help someone and they can't see it, but you can sometimes, having these, tough conversations, and you do it in your role, and I do it in mine as well. 15 years in this business, I've seen a lot of ups and downs in companies, and everyone believes that their company is, the best thing since sliced bread. But things happen, markets change, economies, things happen. Inflation, cost of capital, just trends in industry, things change. And when it comes to financial planning and wealth management, you want to have someone who can have those real conversations with you. You talked about mitigating risks. I mean, there's a lot of risk when it comes to running a business, especially when you have partners involved. So those buy-sell agreements can play a key role. Um,
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about holistic planning. I know that's your expertise. That's your calling card. Let's talk about planning in general. What are some nuggets you can share with our listening audience?
Yeah. So when I say that I'm a holistic planner, it's
Hmm.
because great, we could talk about the business all day long. We could talk about numbers, but that part of it is generally not the most exciting part of the conversation. Like I dig in deep, right? I say, what does this business mean for you? What were you experiencing when you opened this business? Tell me about your children. Tell me about what they went to school for, what they're doing, what would their role in this business be. So we really want to find like the value of life for them, right, in this conversation. What do you want to do if you were to retire and decide to step away from the business? Do you want to travel the world? Do you want to, spend more time with your grandchildren? Whatever that is. But we talk about SMART goals, which is specific goals, measurable goals, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Those parts
Hmm.
of it are important, but I want to know the why. I want to know how, if we created the perfect plan, we mitigated all the risk, we've tried to take care of as much taxable exposure as we can so we can get as many dollars in your pocket. We're taking care of your employees through group benefits. You don't have high turnover, you have great retention, you're putting your dollars in all of the buckets that create value for you long term, tangibly, like from a financial standpoint and also from a quality of life standpoint. What if we've done everything right? What does that look like?
Hmm.
Um, and at the end of this all, what does this business look like for you, et cetera, et cetera?
Hmm. Give a scenario of maybe someone you've worked with, and so SMART. Can you repeat that acronym? The SMART goal setting.
So we
Yeah,
want specific,
yeah.
measurable, achievable, relevant,
Hmm.
and time bound. So we want to be really specific with those um, key elements. And um, I think that's just a good way. Like, and I'm not saying everybody has to have an answer to it right now,
Yeah.
but if you don't, then it's the question to ponder on as you go to bed and you think about it every night and you figure out what that is. I also see with a lot of business owners, they're like, I'm happy, it's doing well.
Hmm.
Um, Whatever happens, happens. I feel confident in myself and my team. We also want to make your business's economy and recession proof. And we do that through diversification and proper planning, right? You can't
Hmm.
have all your money in the business. Like, use my story as an example, but you can't have all your money in the business. You also
Right.
can't have all your money in your real estate. Like, it's really frustrating working sometimes with real estate investors because they think their idea and what they know the most is the best thing since sliced bread. But the economy
Hmm.
is always going to do what the economy is going to do. The taxes are always going to go up, right? So while we don't know perfectly every detail about the future, we know trends.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, I like Angel's kind of chiming in here with some good. So you have to hear the SMART goal stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. I like that, Christina, that you brought your consultant. We didn't go into much of your entrepreneurship journey, but I love that you brought your consultant background into your financial planning practice,
Hmm.
right? Setting out your clients and actually helping them with their SMART goal setting. um, Give us some examples of some goals or some SMART goal setting that your clients that you've worked with. What are some of the goals that your clients like to achieve and you've helped them achieve?
Hmm. Um, you know, this sounds like the boring answer, but like retirement, right? If someone
Mhm.
owns a business and they understand they shouldn't put everything in the business, that group 401k or retirement plan is going to be their next best valuable asset after their family, their house, and the business, right? And I think getting them to a place that, hey, if you decided you wanted to walk away, or you decided you wanted to do something with the business, you can retire by age 55. I think for me, I'm a little bit of a nerd here. I love the analytical part of it. And then I love the relationship with people. And I say, hey,
Hmm.
like, here are the capital market assumptions that I built in this plan. It's on the last page of the plan. We can change it to whatever you want. If your business grows at 7% every year and I put 5, then I can change that. If it's lower, I can change that. But let's project out conservatively
Hmm.
what the future looks like, so that it's not I think I can, hang up my boots at 55. You can hang up the boots at 55. And then maybe you take a step back with the business, and you take whatever contracts you want. So that's where I would say being specific. So, like, using the age measurable is how much do you need or want after you're done working, right?
Hmm.
Achievable is like, a lot of people say, this is what I want. And we say, well, is it achievable? Let's run the numbers and see what
Right.
that looks like. Um, Relevant in this retirement example, I mean, retirement's relevant, right? We know the social security system isn't favorable. We don't know what that's going to look like. You have to be saving for the future. And then time bound is, I think, the other thing that people are taking for granted is like, oh, I love my business so much, I never want to stop working. But what if, like, you're old, right? What if you're tired? Like, I know my body felt different once I hit my 30s compared to my 20s. And I now finally accept that that's a truth. And I think I'll just continue to feel a little bit tired as much as I try to be healthy, right? And maybe I just want to take it easy. Like, do you think that life do you think that your life should afford you some rest, right? Again, this is very, for me, first gen immigrant story, but like, we're taught to work, work, work. Like, there's no not working. But also, I think that my parents carved out the American dream because we're allowed to go on vacations for a two months in the south of France, right? Like, why don't we spend enough time dreaming that and figuring out how that happened? So, there's a lot in there if we wanted to dig deeper. And I think a lot of business owners today are minorities who have this mentality.
Yes, I just love your shares because it has me thinking, kind of going back as well with my family, and I can't speak for other nationalities, but is one thing that a lot of um, my family from my country don't plan, don't talk about what next. Just they pass on and let the kids kind of figure everything, figure everything
Yeah.
out. There's no insurance. There's no will. There's no trust. There's no plan at all whatsoever because no one thinks that what's going to happen is going to happen. I mean, there's two things that is guaranteed in life, right? One is taxes.
Yeah.
You got to pay taxes, and the other one is death. Right?
Mark
It
Twain.
is going to come. It is going to come at some point. So having that in place. So
Yeah.
I love that you shared that. So we wind down to the tail end of our talk here, Christine. I mean, time
I have a
does go.
question for you, though.
Your question for me? Okay, I'm in the hot
Yeah.
seat. Okay, fire away.
So we talked about, you often are approached with people who say, hey, I want to sell the business, a
Hmm.
wife, a kid, I want to move on to my own dreams and aspirations. This wasn't in the cards for me. What do you think, like, why do you think that, like, either those owners or professionals haven't approached them? Like, why wasn't that conversation had? Like, how did we end up here? Because I think it's far more frequent than we really are talking about.
So are you referring to they not having a conversation about making retirement plans?
Yep. Not retirement, like succession planning in general. Like, all the calls that you get about, hey, I need to sell this business.
Yeah.
This is not something I really had in the cards to run.
Well, it's kind of unfortunate, right? And I'm in an interesting space where I actually try to talk people out of selling their company, believe it or not, because it is a last resort. When you think of your business, it is an investment, right? So you want to think about, you started a business, and you want to figure out, what's the end game here? And the end game could be, hey, I'm going to have my employees purchase a business like an ESOP, right? So have employee stock options, right? Or I want to keep it in the family, right? I want to have my family take it over, or maybe I want to go public. So just having these conversations is important. So yeah, so when they come to us, a lot of times you want to know, okay, first of all, who is your financial advisor, because that your financial advisor should be involved in this conversation as far as making sure the right retirement plans in place. That's someone like yourself will come and play, and kind of going through all the options. In some cases, I was selling this company that built this software that did transcriptions. Like we have it here, but when we do the repurpose of this content, the captions. So they had a software that created that, and his son was in the business, and son was actually pretty interested in the business. For some reason, the owner didn't want he has conception. He don't think his son could have run to be honest, he didn't think his son could have run the business,
Mm.
right? And multiple times, like, have you had a conversation with him about taking it over? It's like, oh, well, he's doing well, and he's, I don't know if this is a good fit for him. And we actually went to market. We had multiple offers, for the business, and guess what? The son raised his hand. Hey, pops, I think I'm going to run this business. You know,
Mm.
so yeah, so I have these conversations with clients, like, let's, same as you're saying here, like, what are the alternatives to exiting, and what's a succession plan?
Mhm.
And a succession plan doesn't necessarily have to be um, family or someone's in the business. It could just mean, hey, in the event of a disability, or in the event of I'm no longer able to run the business, there is a instrument where we can fund the role of a CEO, or someone can step in by way of having some sort of insurance, and so on, and putting those things in place. So it's a very important discussion, because I mean, this is how this country was built, right?
Yeah,
On small business ownership, and I just hated to see businesses close because they didn't make the right plans, have the right
yeah,
plans in place. So yeah, great question. I think is important.
yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it pains me to see businesses close as well. I'm like, no.
Now, I mean, you lost jobs. You think about, the taxes that, your firefighters, your teachers, that's, taxpayer dollars is covering all of that, So you want to keep, want to have a country that's thriving and that's growing.
Mhm.
Um, so any takeaway as you wrap things up, Christina? Great question, by the way. Actually, I prefer to be in the hot seat than when it's actually, people don't know, it's actually difficult to moderate and ask questions. I actually prefer to be the one being asked a question, so I can talk all day. But
Yeah.
um, I want to hear, is any takeaways, anything that we didn't really talk about that is worth sharing to our listening audience?
Um, I hope that whoever's listening, whether you're a professional in the industry that has resources to help with these conversations, or if you're a business owner yourself, and whether you have a financial advisor or not, just continue to be open minded and learn. If a professional like me reaches out to say, hi, just want to introduce myself, like we don't all do the same thing, right? I didn't have to choose to want to work with businesses and work with like group benefits or this or that. Like we all actually create who we want to work with and how we want to work with our clients. And so that's really important to know, because we don't all offer the same thing. So just be open minded. I think throughout the course of growing personally and professionally, make sure that your plans and your dreams and desires kind of audit yourself. Um, comb through things. Because your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted in 2024 doesn't mean everything you're doing today is going to be relevant in 2030. And like that's huge. Like always audit your plan, have a system where you're having someone else look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I think also it's always good to have a second pair of eyes. You may have started your business with someone that at the time they were the ideal fit for you, whether it be your financial advisor, your CPA, your attorney, or whoever you're working with. But sometimes it's good to have a second opinion. And as you grow and as you expand, you talk, risk mitigation is huge. So if you're planning on selling a business, what increases your multiples is actually de-risking your business. So having someone come in and see what your exposures are, because
Mhm.
you want to make sure your business can continue. You know, long after you're here or long after you're gone. So it's important to have someone come in and assess your business, assess your insurance, assess. We talked a lot about succession plan and so on. So, Christina, how can folks get a hold of you? And I'm not sure if any other speaking engagements lined up, and what's happening in your world. If you want to share with the audience as we wrap things up.
I have no date set on future events. However, I'm always doing events, building my team to help me manage that so that I can stay in front of my clients and give them the time that they need with me while my team helps manage my events. But, stay connected with me on social media. On LinkedIn, you'll find a lot of articles on a lot of these topics we've covered, both personal and business related. On Instagram, that's a great way to stay connected, and on my Facebook group as well. And the best way to reach me if you're just interested in chatting, if you have any questions, or if you want an audit yourself, would be to email me, which is going to be my first name and my last name. So Christina.Singh@nm.com. So N like Northwestern, M like mutual.com.
Thank you so much, Christina. And we've got one more comment in here. Hold on. Angel, we got to get you in the program, man. I'm loving your spirit here. So, business owner who are, sometimes my dyslexia kicks in. I can't read and talk. Business owners who are too active in the day-to-day of their business can greatly devalue the business and make it hard to sell. Yeah. You want to make it's funny. I share this a lot that, folks that came from the corporate world and are now running their business, it's like you have to kind of make a switch, because in the corporate world, you're trying your best to keep your job, right? So you're not, you want to make yourself as relevant as possible. So you're doing everything. And a lot of times you have two jobs within the one job, right? Because you want to keep your job security. You don't want to teach anyone anything else. But as you become an entrepreneur, you actually want to share all of your knowledge and have someone replace you and make yourself replaceable. So, Angel, great share there. So, hey, Christina, it's a pleasure having you on. We'll put some information where folks can get a hold of you. I'm looking forward to your continued growth and success and helping clients with their plans and their holistic plans. And everything else. So I appreciate that. Next week, we're going to be joined by John Noonan of Growth Plan Partners. We're going to talk about how fractional sales leadership can help you build a path to more sales. That's going to be next week, Wednesday. So tune in for that. We also, in August, about a month away, we're going to be in Manhattan for a mixer event. This is for professionals, business professionals, attorneys, CPAs, financial planners, private equity folks, investors, and business owners. So it's going to be a cool time we're going to have. It's going to be a nice rooftop in Midtown Manhattan. So be sure to join us for that. Look out for that information. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day. And I appreciate you, Christina, as always, for tuning in and being a guest on our program here at Off the Record with KyleSellsBiz. Thank you so much.
Bye.